False. Okay, not at all. We'll get there later though. Okay. So you have that. You have Vatican II situated in our country during the sexual revolution. That's very important. Okay. Everybody's running around. You have Woodstock going on, and free love. Let's all move to communes, and we're hippies, and it's all great. Okay, that's what's going on in the sexual revolution in the 1960s. Okay. Now, this is very important. It's all important, I guess. Pope John the 23rd, who we said started the Second Vatican Council, he says, look, let's have a committee of people study contraception, and then we'll make a ruling later. Okay, we'll make a ruling after the council or whatever. But he's like, I don't want to do anything with it right now. Why? Because even then it's a hot button topic. Okay, so he says, let's get some people together to think about it, and we'll issue something later. Okay, does that make sense? He dies, so he didn't have to deal with it. Okay, Paul VI comes along, who's the Pope that finishes the Second Vatican Council, and makes the committee 72 members. Okay, 72 members strong. Some of them priests and cardinals and bishops, but most of them are lay people. All right. I don't know. Maybe this is the one right here. There we go. 72 people. What's that? Okay. Don't give it to her. Okay. Now, they issue, all right, what they call this, the majority report and the minority report. You need to make sure you get this down because this is very important. If you wonder why 90% of Catholics use contraception today, even though the Church says it's a mortal sin, this will explain it. Okay? That commission, Paul VI, 72 people, study it, get back to me and let me know. Okay? So the majority report, just like in any place that has a committee that studies things, this is what most people think in the committee, and they write up their reasons. Okay? The minority report gets together, all the people that have an opinion, and they write theirs. Okay? And they give that to the Pope. Comprende? We good on that? All right. Now, what happens... Let me see if I get to that. Okay. Yeah. So you read the majority report. The majority of people on this are for contraception. So the majority report ends up being a pro-contraception report. Make sure you get that down. Yeah. Majority report, pro-contraception. Okay. The minority report then, obviously, is against contraception. Okay? Now, no one knows this. It's just supposed to go to the Pope to help him make his decision. All right? The majority report, this is a quote from there. Well instructed and prudently educated as Christians, they will prudently and serenely decide what is truly for the good of the couple and of the children, and does not neglect their own personal Christian perfection, and is therefore what God, revealing Himself through the natural law and Christian revelation, sets before them to do. Painting this picture, serenely we will decide. Okay? Serenely, prudently, all of these things. We will use contraception prudently, serenely. Okay? We're not going to use it all the time, just in certain cases. Very slippery slope there. All right? Now, here is the big problem. Well, there's two. First of all, majority report, all lay people. Minority report, all clergy. So you have old men who are not married and who do not have sex, all on one side saying, we shouldn't use contraception, Holy Father. Everyone else on the committee, which I think was 66 to 6, 666, But literally, the majority report was, I believe, 66 lay people who all are having sex and do have families who say contraception should be okay. All right? So that's one problem. The other problem is that the majority report was leaked to the press in 1967. Get the date down. That's important.
So the question is
Yes, both reports. But at first it was the majority report that was leaked. Okay? Somebody on the committee who was supposed to just give it to the Pope sent it to, I believe it was the New York Times. I think it was the New York Times. Okay? It is published in its entirety in the spring of '67 in major newspapers throughout our country. All right? If you're reading that and you are a Catholic, what are you thinking is going to happen eventually? Contraception is going to be approved by the church. Does that make sense? You read that? Oh my gosh, 66-6. That's the vote. Every other Christian community has essentially caved on the issue. It's going to be approved, right? The Holy Father is going to stamp it and say, here you go. Catholics, we can now use contraception in certain instances. All right? It starts getting preached by priests that contraception is going to be okay. Start using it. Do it prudently. Do it serenely. But start using it. You have the majority report. It's going to be approved. Does that make sense? So if you're a Catholic, you read in the New York Times newspaper that contraception, you read all these arguments, okay? You see it's only 6 old priest men on the other side who are saying, no, we're not doing that. All right? You're thinking to yourself, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Okay? Now, the minority report, again, the minority report says you can't split the unitive and the marital sexual intercourse from the procreative. The minority report says this from the priests. It's really short. The majority report, really long, lots of flowery words, serenely, prudently, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do it. It's going to be okay, certain instances. The minority report is very short. It says, babies and bonding cannot be separated. Can't be separated. You can't have bonding, which is sex, without the baby aspect. Without being open to life, there's a lie that's inherent there. We're going to get into the argument in a minute. Okay? But it's very short, very simple. Let's not think big term here. Let's think each moment, this sexual act, is it prudent, or is it permissible to use contraception? And the answer to that is no. The majority report gets into all these circumstances and all that stuff. The minority report is like, look, it's very clear. The church has always taught this. It will always continue to teach this. There's very good reasons for it. Okay? But that's what the minority report says. All right? Now, the central question of the minority report is contraception acceptable? And the answer to that is no in the minority report. Okay? Is contraception acceptable? No, it's not. And there's very clear moral reasons why not in there. Okay? But they don't get into all the big things that the majority report gets into to try to get people distracted from the issue. Okay? Now, so we have then Humanae Vitae doesn't get released by the Holy Father until 1968. Over a year later. Okay? What do you think people's reactions were when Humanae Vitae is released? What did Humanae Vitae say, first of all? Do we know that? Humanae Vitae, of course, takes the minority report side. Okay?
Everybody thought it was the majority.
Everybody thought it was going to be the majority. So what do you think the reaction in this country was, and in other countries too? Confusion and anger. What are you talking about? How could that be? It was a slam dunk. It's going to be accepted. And now you're telling me, now this letter comes out from the Holy Father in '68 saying, no, you can't do it, ever. As the church has always taught, contraception is always immoral. the reaction was and still is anger and hatred towards the church. Okay? Anger and hatred. And it continues today. 90% of Catholics are still using contraception because of the fact that it was preached and everybody thought it was going to be okay. Their mothers and fathers have told them it's okay. All this other stuff that's going on. There is still the number one issue that makes people upset at the church is contraception, without doubt. Far and away. Catholics at the church. I'm not talking about people outside the church. Okay? Catholics that are in the church hate the church. Number one reason, contraception. Okay? Priests, a lot of priests still won't even preach on it. Because they know if they do, they're going to get a lot of hate mail. If I preached on it this weekend, which I don't care about hate mail, okay? Maybe I will. We'll see. I don't go in like, oh, in 2 months I'm going to preach on contraception, you know. And I think it's such a controversial topic that you really have to build respect with your people before you can start preaching on that. You can't just walk in and be like, hi, I'm the new guy, and here I'm railing at you about contraception. Okay, well, you have to do it out of love, but you also have to have their respect and trust before you can go there, because it's such a fiery topic. Okay? Are we good? So far, questions on any of this? This is very important and some of you are asleep. Kari? Kari? Yes.
So like the question after when was it released? It's like why does this cause the gang problem like to today? Is that like people think it's okay still today?
Yes, because of the gap. People were able to start thinking that it was going to be okay, and they lived that way for a year and a half. So we had a year and a half where people were in the church were basically thinking that contraception was going to be approved. So they lived as if it was already. So that has still caused a problem.
What are they doing? Are they just sitting there? Like,
Who? The church?
what are they doing for a year?
The church?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't alive then. But I hope... I don't, it's a good question. Why doesn't the church come out really quickly and say, whoa, 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 you know, hang on, that's not what we're going to say. But the Holy Father, I mean, the Pope was still weighing his options. And the United States isn't the only country. You know, I mean, like sometimes we think it is. We think we're the only country. But really, he has all these other considerations. So he can't just say, oh my gosh, they released it, and now I've got to hurry up and stamp this out. Looking back on it, would it have been wise to still come out and say very quickly, stop, here's my ruling, here's Humanae Vitae, much sooner? Yes. Would that have helped? Yes. Did it happen? No. And so we still have all these issues today. I don't know. I wish you were a cardinal back then. You could have helped straighten it out. India? On human life? On human life. Yep. Other questions? All right, stand up for a minute. 1 minute. We don't have bathroom break today. Stand up, stretch. Come on. If it's an emergency, yeah. If it's an emergency. Here it is. Is anybody else hot? You're not hot? You guys cold? I'm like burning up. The dress is not hot.
So that's not making you hot, it's just topic.
Yeah. So it's low maintenance. That's why I wear it. It's like easier. It's not like a political statement or anything. I just wear the dress because it's... What's that? Sometimes. Today I rolled up my pants so they're like capris. See? They're my knickers. All righty.
I think that's what's making you hot though.
The topic?
No, your dress. Your dress.
My dress? It's actually cooler, I think, than but
But I had you hot.
I think it's just hot in the room.
It really is, and I don't know.
It's not? Okay. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting excited about it or something. Okay, let's move on.
No, wait.
4 predictions that Humanae Vitae makes from Pope Paul VI. He says, look, if we cave on contraception, these are 4 things that will happen. If contraception becomes prevalent in our society, 4 things will happen. Number 1, and you need to know these. They will be on the test. A general lowering of morality will take place. Okay? His second one, you don't have to write them all out. You can, if you want to find a shorthand way to get it down. But basically, man will view woman simply as a source of pleasure. Once he gets used to contraception, man will view woman simply as a source of pleasure. Because why? Because we've removed the babies from the bonding and we're now able to simply bond. I am simply able to get pleasure out of the sexual experience, and that's all a woman's for. She's no longer the mother of my child, potentially. She's just someone who will give me pleasure. Number 3, contraception would be used by governments to engineer their population. Where does that happen right now? China and other countries followed suit. That didn't happen until 10 years after Humanae Vitae. Okay, China adopts their one-child policy in 1979. The 4th prediction. Humans would turn their bodies into objects, or humanity would view their bodies as objects. Humanity would view their bodies as objects. What philosophical heresy is that? We talked about it in the fall. When I think of my body as an object, it is a sin. What philosophy are we talking about there when we do that? When we separate the spirit from the body, the soul from the body. Dualism. Write that down. Okay. The separation there, when I start to treat my body as an object, I am now, that's that dualism we were talking about in the fall. That's just my body thing. That's just my body that I'm not open to life with. But I'm really on a spiritual plane. Me and my wife, or me and my girlfriend we're one.
So could I put dualism in parentheses Friday?
Yeah. Yes. I want you to associate dualism with that. I will treat my body as an object, or I will at least view it that way.
What does lowering morality mean?
Just that basically people will become more promiscuous, will be less virtuous, will do more things immoral. We're going to get to that here right now. Good question. One of the things that we need, and not that this is the only indicator of morality, but there's a chart on your handout that shows the divorce rate from 1950 to 2006. Okay? It's hovering at 20% all along here, 1950. It makes the turn at 1968. And it is now leveling off around 51% ever since then. This is the moment that contraception becomes legalized in our country. Both happened at about the same time. Yep. It was illegal. Contraception was illegal until some Supreme Court cases eventually legalized it. So yes, for a long time it was illegal. Justine?
Would you say that is because you take children out of the picture and therefore it's not as much keeping like the husband and wife together?
Yes. Yes, definitely one of the things that would happen there. And more of like, I view now my wife as a sexual object of pleasure. But what happens is no matter how beautiful you both are, about 2 years in, all of a sudden you don't like each other. Right? And there's that time where the the lust will wear off no matter who you are, no matter who you're married to. So if your lust is what's driving you, eventually that wears off. And you're left, if you don't have children, you're a lot more likely to get divorced. I have somewhere the statistic, I don't think I put it on there, but it jumps dramatically. The chances of a marriage lasting if you have a child in the first 2 years versus not is astronomically different.
So if you do have a child
In the first 2 years,
your marriage is going to last.
the percentages are much higher for how long your marriage will last.
You're supposed to have a child in the first 2 years?
No, the church doesn't. The church doesn't say you're supposed to have a child in the first 2 years. The statistics out there will show you that if you have a child in the first 2 years, your chances of getting a divorce are way lower. That's not the church. That's the population in general. If you have a kid in that first 2 years, you're much less likely. Yes, although, yeah, basically. But we have to be careful with statistics. Sometimes you can't say one causes the other. You just have to say there's a correlation there. So you can't say contraception causes that, or having a child causes the marriage to stay together. But we just have to say, wow, there's a big correlation there, okay, between those two numbers. Questions on any of that so far?
What was the number one?
A lowering of morality. So I'm just giving you some examples of ways that morality has lowered. Also, 25% of women filing for divorce cited infidelity. Okay? The rate of divorce has slowed in the 1980s and 90s, but it is still double what it was in 1960. It doubled. Okay? 1974, the first year when more U.S. marriages ended in divorce rather than in death. The first year ever where more marriages ended in divorce than in death. Okay, and I'm not saying divorce is the lone indicator of immorality. All right, but we have to ask ourselves, there's something going on there. Okay?
Oh, wait, can
Yep.
the first statistic, is
Mhm.
that when the women were unfaithful or when the men were unfaithful?
The women that are filing for divorce, so it's the woman saying that the man is being unfaithful. Because that's just common sense. If I can go have sex with someone and know that I'm not going to get pregnant, I'm a lot more likely to sleep around and cheat on my wife. Okay, so that's what's going on there. That's not to say that women aren't also increasing their infidelity as well, but that was just a statistic that, yeah. So anyway, you're basically looking at that jump all because of contraception, essentially. Okay. Objectifying women, prediction number 2. Let's look at some recent statistics on that. 70% of men view pornography at least once a month. 20,000 child porn pictures are placed online every week. 100,000 websites feature child pornography. In the United States, the porn industry has a $12 billion revenue a year, which is more than CBS, ABC, and NBC combined. $12 billion. 25% of all search engine requests involve porn. 80% of women filing for divorce did so because of physical abuse. Okay? 25% of all search engine requests involve porn.
No, the one before about 25% following because of infidelity. It says
80% of women filing for divorce did so because of physical abuse. It may have been different years. This is a different source too. So,
Physical abuse is different than infidelity.
right, we're saying though, but physical abuse is often going to happen because you think of the woman as an object. So I think that's the relationship there. Okay?
That definition of physical abuse.
I don't know. That's why I put the source up there if you want to go find out. If you want to do more.
About 10 boys in here, so 7 out of 10, that's so weird to think about. The first statistic.
70% of men view pornography at least once a month. Yes, exactly. The number one thing I hear in the confessional from men is pornography. The number one thing. I ask every man who's in that age range, typically, if they don't say it, I just say, okay, there's a couple of, I don't always ask, but sometimes when they're like, and I think that's about it, and they're looking for me to maybe ask them some things, then I'll say, are you looking at pornography? It's the number one thing I hear in the confessional. Okay? It's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. and it destroys, it objectifies women. Okay, it is a great indicator of that. Prediction number 3, governments will use contraception to control populations. In 1979, China creates its one-child policies. Okay, if you want to read the book Fatal Misconception, you can get a worldwide history of the issue. Here's the irony of the one-child policy and governments trying to get people to have less kids so that we won't starve to death. Now guess what's happening? Recently, some European governments, fearful of a future pensions crisis, which is what? What's the pension? What's the pension in our country called? The main one. Social Security. So some European governments, because what does Social Security operate under the assumption of? It's a pyramid scheme, basically. There's always going to be more people, right? So you have this going on with Social Security. You have this generation has this many people. The next generation has this many people. The next people. So I pay, if I'm in this generation and I'm 30 years old, I pay $8. We all pay $8, okay, into Social Security. They use that money to pay these people, but there's going to be money left over. You save that, you put that in the bank, and you let that grow. All right? So you keep making more money while paying the people who come before because there's less, right? Well, what happens when this happens? When this happens and there's no growth in population, you only have enough money to pay off these people. And the money that we're paying into Social Security is always less than it is that they're getting out of it because it's been in the bank for so long. Comprende? If this happens, if you actually have less people, then obviously it breaks. Okay? It breaks. It probably actually even breaks when it's like this. Okay? You have then, that's what's going on with Social Security in our country too. Okay? It's ready to collapse. Some governments in Europe, they are worse than we are. Okay? They're having less children even than the United States. Fearful of a future pensions crisis, these governments have developed natalist policies. Policies to get people in their country to have kids again. So the same governments who were helping people not have kids 30 years ago are looking for ways to get you to have kids now. Do you see why? Because their Social Security is going broke.
Is that the irony?
That's the irony. They were 30 years ago saying, "Don't have kids, stop having kids. We're going to run out of resources." Now they're saying, "Please start having kids again, because we're going to go broke." That's the irony. The same governments, same countries. Okay, measures that they are doing now include increasing tax allowances for working parents, improving child care provision, reducing hours or working weekends for female professions, such as health care. Okay, they're looking for things that they can do to help families have kids again. Does that make sense? Do you see the irony? Okay. Eric, head up please. Sean, this is important.
So did you say they're giving them tax breaks?
Tax breaks. They're trying to find ways to help nurses who typically are mothers, who typically have kids, to give them more time with their children, because if they're not having enough time, then they're probably not going to have more kids. Those kinds of, they're looking for all these different ways things that they can do. I even read one time that in Indonesia somewhere, they were the country or a state or something was giving money for people just to go on dates. They're just trying to get people together to have babies. Okay, they're like, because we're running, and it's funny. It's always about money for the government. You know, look, we're going to run out of money, so stop having kids. 30 years ago. Now it's, we're going to run out of money, start having kids. Okay? That's the problem when you always think, oh, well, I know exactly how the future is going to play out. When you have that arrogance and you're not following the teachings of the church or whoever, if you think you can see 30 years down the road with your own intelligence,